Hey everybody, today I want to show you a tip or a trick if you're the proud owner of one of these Scott releases. They all have something in common, from the Longhorn Hex, the Longhorn Hunter, which will have a strap as well, to the original red Longhorn, the Black Hole, Mini Black Hole, Advantage, Mini Advantage, the Pro Advantage, to the Mini Pro, to our newer models like the Longhorn Micro and the Ascent. All of these releases use a tiny rubber band to pull that hook back in behind the moon automatically. And it's not if, it's when it's gonna break. That rubber band will dry rot over time, or after X number of shots. You will end up having to replace that rubber band. So it will test your patience. If you don't know what you're doing, you can fumble through it, but it may take you forever. I've got a little trick today that I want to show you that will make your life much easier, and you'll look like an expert changing these rubber bands. You will need a couple of tools to make this job simple. My tool of preference are tiny tweezers that come to a sharp point like that. I'll show you why in a minute, but those make this job really easy. You could also use a paper clip. You could open it up and maybe bend the end of the paper clip into a little bitty hook. That will help achieve what we're trying to do. A piece of serving thread. All you archers that tie in peeps, that do your own strings, whatever, you'll have a spool of serving laying around. A 10, 11, 12-inch piece of serving will be plenty. You can use an old piece of fiber optic that you've got laying around, and a garbage twist tie if need be. This is just a wire out of a garbage twist tie that I peeled the covering off of, and it exposed that little tiny wire, and this thing works great actually. But a couple things you might need to make this job easy. Let's go check it out. Here's a close-up of the little culprit we're talking about right here. This is what we're going to be changing. This little rubber band has to go over what I'm going to call is the T. If you can see right here, there's a T shape right here, and that's going to be similar on every release. This is an Advantage with an aluminum head. This is a newer Longhorn Micro with a stainless steel head, and you can see they both have the same T. That's where the rubber band has to ride. That's the home base for the rubber band. So that's the first hurdle, is getting that rubber band over that T. So I like to start it right there on the corner, put some pressure with my thumb, and these little tweezers with a sharp point make this super easy to work with. You can drag it wherever you need to drag it, stretch it where you need to stretch it, and it should go on without a whole lot of effort. Just like that. See, I've got it over the T now. I can stretch it out a little bit to show you that I've got it snug on its home base. That's where it needs to be. So now what I want to do is use any type of the material we talked about, the serving thread, the sewing thread, your trash tie, your old piece of fiber optic. I'm going to use a piece of serving thread to show you this next step, because it's probably one of the most common pieces that you will have at home. If you don't have the serving thread, you'll have sewing thread or something similar, and this will be pretty easy. So what I want to do next is take my tweezers and get underneath that rubber band and pop it up a little bit to create a little bit of a gap. Take one end of your serving thread and just stick it through the rubber band. You want to capture that thread in there. So do it like that. Pop your tweezers out. So now you can see I've got my rubber band hung on that serving thread. Now if you look, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to use the right gap. You can use either gap to the side of the moon right here, this lower gap or this lower gap on the left right here. You want to take both ends of your serving, take one end and feed it through, catch it on the other side. Now take your other piece of serving and feed it through the exact same hole. That way we're catching the rubber band on the opposite side now. So now I can flip the release over, and you can see I've got the rubber band hung on that thread, which now allows me to lay it right over the hook, grab one end, pull real slow and steady, pull your serving out, and voila, the rubber band is in place, fixed, ready. Your release is now ready for action. All of your Scott releases that accept this rubber band are going to go on exactly like I showed you right there. Most of them have plenty of room to work, plenty of gap to get your serving, your thread, whatever you're using to pull that rubber band through. The one release that you're going to have trouble with, that I find the hardest, is the Ascent, and you can see why. The original heads, or the older heads, have a wider front to them. The Ascent has been machined down and it's much narrower, so what that's done is the gap that we used to push the thread through earlier, that gap has been greatly reduced on the Ascent. You just don't have a lot of room in there to get a thread. It's going to test you to get a thread through there, so that's when I would use the bread tie or the tiny wire. The trash tie, bread tie will slide right through there with ease, comes right out the other side. There's plenty of room because it's much more rigid than thread for you to turn it and get your second side through there as well. So all of them are pretty simple. The Ascent is the hardest by far, but if you use a bread tie like I showed you right there, you can make it happen just as quick. So back in perfect working order, you're ready to go. If you're in the market for a new release, go visit your local dealer and ask for the Scott brand. If you want to see every release in the Scott lineup, go to scottarchery.com and check out all the offerings. Thanks for your business.